Well, good afternoon. I hope you enjoyed the sessions in the networking lounge and the round table. I managed to have a couple of chats with people. So moving on in track one, welcome to Jonathan Goh from Medibank. I believe you're in Melbourne, John. His session is a dam for all seasons and Medibank's criteria for change in an agile world. If you're looking for the dam and heritage of cultural permissions with the Museum of New Zealand to Papa Tongarewa, hopefully I've said that correctly, scroll to the top of agenda and click track 2. And remember to send those questions in the Q&A panel, and I'll collect those at the end and we can have a session with John. So without further ado, thanks very much, John. Over to you.
Thanks, Andrew. Thanks everyone for coming. And as Andrew said, my name's John. I lead the automation audience practice over here at Medibank in Melbourne. And I look after all things MarTech, including the dam. So I'll just jump into it. I just wanted to start with a little quote here from Lisa Bodell, who's a thinker and an influencer in the space of people, change, and simplicity. Because fundamentally, what we set out to achieve was a process to simplify and streamline the way we work. And people were critical to us achieving success. So, we really positioned it as a common change and a common purpose. And that was the way we really kind of sold in the dam to the senior management, not just another MarTech platform that we had to buy. It was fundamentally a heart of, the people change that we were looking to instill. So just a little bit of a background about Medibank for people who don't know about us. We are Australia's largest health insurer. We insure over 3.7 million customers across the Medibank and AHM brands, and we also sell a range of diversified insurance products, including travel, pet, life insurance. So we're also the oldest health insurance brand in Australia. We have a history of over 40 years. And for the marketers in the crowd, you'll also start thinking about of 40 years, we've got a lot of brand heritage, we've got a lot of asset heritage, and we've got a lot of collateral that needs to be managed by the team. So that was kind of the catalyst for us really thinking and embarking on this journey. So there's a brief agenda here, I suppose, and this is really our formula for success. So we really started with a challenge. With that challenge, we approached a number of vendors and had the discussion about where we wanted to go, what we wanted to achieve. And from there, we've got a number of solution highlights, which I'll share with you. And I will conclude with just some tips for new starters. Whether you're new to the digital asset manager game or you've had a poor implementation that you really want to reset on, I think these are things that we learned along the way, and certainly things that I learned along the way from other people who were early on into their journey. So, there was a lot of sharing and a lot of learning out of this. So our challenge, as I mentioned, I suppose Medibank is a legacy business. We're over 40 years old. We've moved from a public organization to a private organization. So, along that time, the marketing team has really grown and our range of stakeholders has grown. So, we used to be a very small team, about 30. We're now a team of about 100, 120 with, a huge range of stakeholders from legal to design to external agencies to internal consumers of our brand, external consumers of our brand assets. So, we really started growing, I suppose, with the brand growth. So it was a challenge to obviously manage and harness all our stakeholders, get them looking in the right direction. Along this process, we moved into an agile world. So teams were now decentralized, working across multiple projects, multiple squads. So, in our marketing team, we really needed to make sure that everyone was saying the right thing, using the right assets, and pointing the right way. Again, another thing we had to manage was approvals. So complex email chains, if you can imagine, large range of stakeholders, large range of team members working across multiple projects. Everyone's getting email approvals left, right, and center. It was a nightmare to manage from a a marketing operations point of view. So that was something we were keen to stand out and really standardize across the different teams. With approvals, there wasn't really a central place for people to store things. Teams had their own share folders. Teams had their own way of doing things. We had 4 different variations of our brand assets in 4 different hard drives, 4 different share folders, and 4 different email servers. So I think, it was a real kick in the pants for us to really just centralize and make sure, and centralize and standardize. Because we haven't centralized and standardized, we had a lot of efficiency leakage. People taking sometimes days to find the right copyright on the images, find the right brand assets, and it was really kind of slowing things down. So that was a no-brainer. And finally, our MarTech and automation systems weren't really fully integrated into this process. So we had one moment approved imagery, pushing it into the website, and then going, oh my god, that's not approved. Take it down. So again, time, efficiency leakage. And I suppose to sum this all up, it became a very complex thing to manage if you were working in the team, much less, new starters. And as we were growing, we got a lot of new starters in the team who came in and went, how does this place work? The answer to that was, oh, go and speak to your team leader, because they had one way of managing it, whereas the marketing operations team had another way of managing it. So I think, there was a myriad of challenges, but it really fundamentally came down to a simplicity of operations, because that's what our legacy processes were preventing us to do. So, jumping then into the brief, obviously from a technical perspective, we thought, hey, we need a centralized hub for marketing. We need a digital asset manager and workflow system. However, taking a step back, I realized, the business brief was around simplicity. What tool can we buy to enable us to be more simple and more streamlined in the way we work? So we did an RFP to a number of different vendors, and the brief was, over a number of different factors. One, we needed something that had auditability built into it. Approval audit trail across all teams. 2, a centralized hub, which enabled us to have a unified creative and brand management, in a centralized place. 3, shareable. So, sharing, managing is a key capability for us. So we needed something that had the ability to easily share brand assets with both internal and external teams without, sending off, again, complex email chains, Dropbox share folders, and all sorts of third-party solutions, which, we couldn't control. 4, efficient. So again, going back to the efficiency and simplification, one of the biggest leakages of our time was, admin from logo and asset requests, reproduction, re-editing of stuff that someone already had. So really centralized and getting that efficiency across. And finally, automation, which I'll touch on later, because with all this manual processing, the simple tasks were getting really complicated. You'd have to email 6 different people, attach 4 different versions of proofs, and really kind of spend your time chasing the trail. So what we wanted to do was really focus on automating simple tasks to reduce that context switching, reduce people's anxiety about who to know in the business, who to email in the business, because we really wanted to just keep that very tight. So out of this, we sought a partner to help us really kind of come up with the solution for marketing. So, jumping into some key solution highlights, before I jump into this, I suppose what we did was we basically spun up a core team of internal users, and thinking about the theme of change, I was really mindful. We didn't want to have a big bang solution and then just throw it onto people. We had a very small team of expert users and really scale up an MVP. So, I had, I think, a team of 12 looking at a 6 to 8 week implementation for the first cut to get that buy-in and then iteratively build. So what you see here is really the result of, weeks and weeks and weeks of iterative build, but coming from the one core team who are really influencers in the marketing team who were able to drive home that change. So, solution 1, no brainer. We got a centralized hub. So what you can see in this image here is really marketing's home. We've got a centralized hub where all our content, all our workflows goes. So when you log in as a marketing user, you see our virtual home. When you log in as an external user, you're able to see, the permissions that are assigned to you. So what brand assets you should use, what guidelines you should read. So that's all tailored to you and customized. So really, we were thinking about the user personas. What if legal comes in? What if brand comes in? Or what if a third party comes in? So we've now centralized that all, so we don't have to explain to people all the time where to find stuff. It's all there. And underpinning this obviously is a very logical folder structure and meta tagged assets. I will say that the folder structure as well was a result of a lot of hours of iterative thinking and simplification of what we have. And that was probably the most difficult process. It's really kind of distill, again, simplicity. Simplicity was the byword for the team. And that's what we challenged them to really kind of articulate. How simple can we make it? And it's as simple as, a single solution here. Highlight number 2, I suppose, was, that, as I talked about, that streamlining. We really cut through the layers and layers of complex email chains and really embedded the fabric of our operations in our digital hub. So assets, planning, briefs, anything that was subject to an approval process, we now built into the DAM. So when you got a request from an external external partner, we directed the DAM to fill in the form to, tell us what they need. For internal users, even our marketing users, we got them to brief the creative team or the data and automation team. All the briefs were there, everything was trackable. And what that meant was it was easy to use for our team members and it was transparent for people participating in the process. So you knew at any step of the process where you were sitting in the queue. Ultimately, the simple tasks were then automated. So notifications, automated email notifications would pop up. Brief processing, you got a number in the queue, so you knew exactly where you were. You didn't have to chase, the creative team for when their copywriting would happen, because you knew on your brief number when the job was going to happen. So, I think the outtake of this was we could really focus on delivering business value rather than trying to administrate to a giant complex beast. And solution 3. So, on the theme of that transparency and simplicity, we developed a very transparent hub now of operations, both for marketing management, but also then, internal users. So we had a very clear audit trail of what was checked by whom, when it was checked, and how it was checked. So we really kind of streamlined that process. Not only that, we also built out dashboards that allowed us to really kind of at a marketing management level, understand what our people were doing when they were doing it and how they were doing it. So whether they were filling in the briefs in the right order, and whether there was a backlog or a logjam of, briefs in any one department. So we were allowed, we had the transparency to look at that, and the transparency then to, have upfront discussions with our stakeholders on, where things might be going off or, where we could improve. So I think this was a very iterative conversation with our stakeholders, because again, with transparency and simplicity in mind, we really wanted our stakeholders' feedback. So we really focused on, less about the content in the DAM, more about how do we make things easier and more streamlined for you, the end user. So, this went all the way down to, how do we share images? How do we meta tag images to make things easier for third parties to access? So, it was really an ongoing conversation, and this work never ends, because ultimately it's less about, I suppose, safeguarding our assets, more about having an ongoing relationship through the hub with our customers, internally and externally. So, and as I touched on, the outcome was we actually had now a place we call our marketing home. We still call it the DAM. The next thing I need to do is actually run a competition to change the name, but everyone loves it. Everyone calls it the DAM. It's always been the DAM. May always stay the DAM, but it's become our digital home. So when you want to look for marketing, people go to the DAM. So, one of the great outcomes was there was 50 different briefs across multiple teams. We've now streamlined that into a single process. This again is ongoing work because the work never ends. You can never, I suppose, have too much simplification. So I think this is a way of us keeping on our toes and making sure, newcomers to the business, newcomers to marketing have something easy to use. Again, as I touched on, context switching, especially in an agile, in a remote world, was an absolute killer for us. There's some quite fascinating studies, which I won't go into, which talk about, the detrimental impact of having to switch from email to notification to chat, and the impact on people's, mental state and productivity. However, what we did do is really reduce that email load for very simple things. So, people were feeling less fatigued, more engaged. Speed, we're able to find stuff so much quicker now. It's there, it's meta tagged, no problems at all. Brand assets, single source of truth. Rights management becomes, it's not an issue anymore because everything now is tagged. Assets that have expired don't even show anymore. So there's actually, we've reduced the underlying risk of using either wrong brand images or expired right managed images. Finally, the team is happier, more productive, and has the right tools to do the job. The work again never ends, but we're in a much better place than when we first started this journey because everyone can get around something. And all feedback is great feedback, even negative feedback around this. So we try and make this an ongoing discussion in our day-to-day, and we're at the stage now where we're going to expand our usage of the DAM throughout the enterprise. So that's going to bring another range of great insights and new ways of working for the business, really led by marketing and marketing capability. So, and going into, I suppose, just briefly into the MarTech nerd world, our asset manager now sits in the heart of our MarTech stack. Where I talked about integration before, and again, I'll preface, I will caveat this by saying this is a real work in progress, but this is this is our vision of the future. We would like the DAM integrated into every single thing we do. For us, it's as more, for marketing, it's as important as our data management platform, because we can't hope to activate and automate to our channels, media or own channels, without having a single source of truth to manage our workflows. So it becomes, critically important for us. So, I'm probably not overstating the fact that it sits at the heart of our, decisioning capability, for want of a better word, because it becomes, the heartbeat of the marketing department. So finally, 6 tips for new starters. I think these are things, we learn sometimes painfully, sometimes by accident, but, these are 6 things I think very common to a lot of the DAM implementations I've seen, ones that I've participated in past and ones that I've led, like this one. So, I think first point there is really to start small, really, really start small. For MVP first, and importantly is to find a vendor that fits your culture. There's, obviously many, many vendors out there, big and small, all of which do a job. I think it's your obligation as the DAM influencer in your organizations to really kind of find that one that matches you, because I think great things happen when you have the synergy. Next thing is really getting that executive support. If you need to get executives on board and really sell to them the journey of why we're doing this. It's not a tech project, it's a simplification and process improvement. I think we need to make sure that they understand where we're coming from with this. The third one, there's really kind of with simplification and starting small, start with your process on paper. Don't over-engineer it. We don't need process flow diagrams. We don't need anything to that level of detail yet. Just really start with the desired process, MVP process on a piece of paper. Keep it simple. Again, change management, MVP, that's really critical, and you need to measure that. So really measure adoption, measure uptake, measure usage. That's going to be critical because you need to manage then the people change component. People need to feel safe and comfortable with the new product before they use it. Fifth one there is feedback and iterative development. Keep growing, keep learning. So again, user adoption never stops, and you can't get enough user adoption because you want people to love and use the product. So just keep going with that. And finally, set up first, integrate later. So don't worry about integrating it into your CMS. Don't worry about integrating into your automation tools. Just get it set up with your process on paper, and then your core systems can follow later. Same thing with HR feeds and single sign-on. I think resist the temptation to overcomplicate things because it becomes a very, very boring IT project. Again, I think the mantra is simplify, and hopefully these tips will help you really kind of think about what the DAM does and how it simplifies your world. And that's it from me. So over to you, Andrew, for any questions.
Thanks, John. That's great. I do have some questions here. Let me just, I've been collating them while you've been going through your deck. So there's definitely a lot of people who have either previously tried to get an adoption of a DAM platform or are very keen to understand a little bit more about it. Nikki Roberts says that she's got any successful internal adoption advice. We had poor adoption on our old system and are currently re-platforming with a much better product.
Yeah. So yeah, look, and I think that's a very common scenario for a lot of organizations. I think, re-platforming with the product is a great step, but I think, again, resist the temptation to revisit the, I'm going to say wrongs of the past, but that sounds a bit extreme, but, resist the temptation to fall into those pitfalls before. Really kind of simplify. So with the re-platform, I would advise use that opportunity to really streamline the process and maybe start with one of your processes because you're already existing precedent of people using a centralized tool. But I think thinking with the mantra about simplification, revisit one or two critical processes as your MVP, test your user base, and then grow from there. I think if you start too big too fast, you'll end up in the same boat. So I think simplify and streamline.
And I guess this also goes into the next question, which is how did you get buy-in to overhaul the approval process for stakeholders like legal and then getting them to adopt the technology?
Yep, that's a great question because I think legal are not only a stakeholder but a partner in this. So really we started with a business case. We talked about efficiency and looked at risk management. So what we talked about with legal initially was, we're going to make your job easier. We're going to make it easier, and as a byproduct, we're going to make things less risky for us to operate. So with that, they kind of were bought in, and we've used them actually. We had one legal person in our core working group of 12. So we basically said, you guys help us chart the future because what's in it for you is we're going to make your job easier. So I think that was critical.
I agree. From my own experience, it's really important to have someone from each department in that initial stand-up team, that initial project team, to get I guess to be ears and eyes of each one of those departments and to take them into account. And as you said, from a legal compliance and less risk point of view, you're actually appealing to their role and their job and what they're there to do. So if you're going to come to them with not making it harder, but making their job easier, then there's going to be less resistance to change in that particular regard.
Absolutely, and they can be advocates for the process as well. So I think embrace them and treat them. They're part of the core squad. That's right.
Hopefully they become change champions for you in the other places. Now this is always one that everyone has a challenge with, getting executive buy-in and engagement and backing you up through the process, because there's always pitfalls with the DAM deployment. There are times when you go, oh, is this ever going to work? But you need to make sure that executive sponsorship is there, and that when people push back on things, they come along and reinforce your position. Is there any tips, and how did you get that buy-in from the executive?
Yep. And I think like legal, it's speaking to your stakeholders in the language they understand. So, my chief customer officer and my, and chief finance officer, they're not going to, while they simplification, risk, and centralization are buzzwords for them, I think it's all about the dollars. So for them, it was, this tech investment that I'm asking for is a productivity multiplier. So, that's how I got really kind of the attention, was we're going to implement the tool. Yes, it's a new piece of kit, However, the business dividends are such, productivity, looking at, faster output, less duplicated spend, and, more cut through. So, I really kind of built the business case around sort of key metrics that I knew were hot button topics in the business at the time to reduce efficiency. And, I really just play it back to them. This is one of the tools in which we're going to solve for this.
Yes, I guess if you've been communicating them what the hot topics are, you can speak to the hot topics that are going to resonate with the executive buy-in. And if you can resonate with them, then that's the key piece, isn't it? And you got to keep the presentation simple.
Keep it absolutely simple. I did make the mistake, full disclosure, I made the mistake of showing them the taxonomy behind the dam, and I could see 4 execs in the room completely glaze over. Everyone went straight to their devices and started going.
Right straight on the phone. I've been there before. There's a question coming about dealing with vendors. You've made the point that your vendor relationship and the vendor, RFP process and evaluation process was really important. Can you give us what was your approach to that?
With the vendor process, sorry, my connection must have gone a bit astray. So
yeah, your video seems to have locked up a bit.
Oh, can you hear me?
I can hear you, but you're static.
Oh, apologies. I'll wait till this refreshes, but I can answer the question. With vendors, so with vendors, we kind of, I suppose, had a, drew up a list of agreed internal criteria to take to the vendors. So we kept it, again, very, very consistent, so we could evaluate them on very factual.
Oh, lost you there, John.
To really kind of get the best. Oh.
Maybe you could just repeat that last bit.
Sorry. I have the white screen of death. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, great. I think the last bit was, we established a very common criteria for assessment, and I actually got the project team to actually help me in that assessment, including the legal person. So really,
lost you. Right, the important bit.
Really on how we. Oh, just one sec. Goodness.
Yeah, so you got the legal person involved as well, so that when you're dealing with vendors, you're already having those conversations and making sure that terms of agreement and those sorts of things match the business and not just the technology.
Yep.
Yeah, it's really important. Did you go with a set of use cases rather than a set of requirements? That's one thing I always find is you get a list of requirements and they're all the same things that every dam can do. And it doesn't really give you an understanding of what the use case is around what you're trying to achieve, because I think that makes a difference on the way you implement a dam platform and which dam platform.
Yes, so we had some use cases, and I suppose in the interest of simplification, we didn't want to go crazy with those. I did have a BA working in the background to start collating those, but I think with the vendor engagement, we kept it quite high level because I think we wanted to really assess the cultural fit.
Okay, so the cultural fit was more important than the technology initially.
Yes. Because to your point, all dams do actually the same thing. However, it is the cultural fit and the synergy with the vendor that we found was a real difference in the success.
Yeah, the vendor, the partner. Some vendors have partner models, some vendors don't have partner models. It just depends on what it is. Obviously,
absolutely.
We work as partners with multiple vendors, so I understand that, and I think that's a good approach. I've talked about that before in the past in a number of my blogs and things, that you need that cultural and legal fit up front and early. There's no point spending all the time going through product selection to find that the terms and conditions and the legals just aren't accessible. So that's a good part of that. I'm not sure if I've got many more questions. We're running. How did you determine what legacy items to ingest? Where did you draw the line in the sand?
Good question. We took a time box view with it. I think, it started becoming a too hard basket at one stage. So we basically took a time box and a statute of limitations view with it. I think it was 18 months or 24 months. I can't remember, but we basically just drew the line at a date that minimized, I suppose, any sort of risk, risk parameters. And we said, right, this is what we'll have. Everything else goes into a share folder for later access, but we basically drew a little box around it, ingested those, and applied the taxonomy.
Okay, that's great. Well, time's up, I'm afraid. Thank you very much.